Today, the first people traveled safely on a Hyperloop. Tomorrow, Virgin Hyperloop will change the way the world moves with an on-demand, sustainable mass transportation system that connects cities in minutes.
What's that? The first passengers have actually traveled by Hyperloop.
The first passenger test has now been done of the first new mode of transportation, mass transportation, that we've had in 100 years.
Rocketing between cities at 1,000 miles per hour.
It's an ultra-fast form of transportation propelled by magnetic levitation, the same technology used in high-speed bullet trains. The company's chairman called the test historic, as the magnetic Hyperloop system would be twice as fast as a commercial jet.
For less than $1 in a revolutionary new design by Elon Musk.
He still is to be credited with the initial concept. The SpaceX CEO first announced his ultra-modern transportation system back in 2013 in a 60-page letter. Musk open-sourced Hyperloop's basic design, meaning that anyone could take, adjust, and implement the high-speed idea.
Except, no. This is actually Virgin Hyperloop, formerly Hyperloop One.
After years of negotiations, tests, funding, R&D, and perhaps most importantly, finding the ideal location to install the revolutionary transit system.
Oh, now that's an interesting question. Where would be the perfect place to build a fantastic new transport system that's going to revolutionize society? Well, obviously somewhere where, maybe Silicon Valley, where there's lots of people around and access to smart folks who know IT and can design things and all that. No, or maybe we could just go for, say, somewhere in the absolute middle of the desert. For me, because it's got lots of access to, nothing. So it turns out that is it there. This is the world's most sophisticated Hyperloop.
What we're really saying here is we have a new technology, we have a way to be able to do this. It is the sustainability that we want to have. And what we're showing people is that there's a solution to this, a hope for this, that fits the scale of the problem that's there. It is, in fact, the way forward that we should be looking at.
And if it looks tiny, it's because it is. Sat right here on the really valuable land next to the dirt biking tracks. So that's the World Center for Hyperloop Research that's going to completely revolutionize everything. And trust me, I know, I've been there. As far as, it's quite funny actually. So this is just the access road. Focus. That's the access road just for the power line. And that is the entire Hyperloop. Well, of Hyperloop 1 anyway. This here is an access road for a power line. And it's absolutely in the middle of nowhere. So the nearest you've got, or the nearest interesting stuff is you've got some solar power stations here, the main road. And then it's outside Las Vegas. But why would you put what makes this the perfect site in the absolute middle of nowhere?
And perhaps most importantly, finding the ideal location to install the revolutionary transit system.
And I'm going to take a wild guess. I mean, you can, by all means, tell me why this is such a perfect site for the world's revolutionary new transport system. But I'm going to guess because they didn't want to spend a lot of money on it. And they claim that they've transported someone by Hyperloop. Or so they claim. In reality, they've not actually transported someone anywhere. Because usually for travel, you don't end up in exactly the same place that you started. And that's what they did here. They got into a Hyperloop, they went down the track, then they came back again, and got out at exactly the same place that they went into it, because there is no other way that they could get out of this tube. So let's take a look at what actually happened here in real time, shall we?
Yes! That was so good! That was awesome.
The first passenger test has now been done of the first new mode of transportation, mass transportation, that we've had in 100 years.
But that capsule looks so super futuristic-y, doesn't it? I mean, it's so poddy and sleek and different. But I'm going to show you what it actually is, because it's funny. I mean, they can give themselves all the countdowns that they want, because believe me, these people love their countdowns in their promotional videos.
10, 9, 8, 7,
Engaging drop.
6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, start.
Along with their control rooms to make it look like Cape Canaveral, you know, with a walking out to the capsule and all that sort of thing.
The time has come to ask ourselves again, what is the future we want to build?
All right, team, please confirm you're ready.
And using terms like capsule communications, because that's totally relevant here.
Pegasus, this is Capcom. Prepare for launch in 10, 9, 8, 2, 1, launch.
The driver is essentially ballast.
Especially when you realize that this thing has raised about $500 million.
Virgin Hyperloop One's most recent fundraising effort secured $172 million back in 2019, at least $90 million of which came from a Dubai transit and port company called DP World. They're willing to contribute another $500 million in private capital to complete the project's first phase. But hey, when the dream becomes a reality, when Hyperloop will allow us to live anywhere, work anywhere, and be anywhere, the costs will be totally worth it.
But let's just take a look at that pod for a second, because when you see what it actually is, you'll laugh your arse off. I mean, it does look a little weird, right? I mean, kind of like it's one thing pretending to be another. Kind of like it's one thing inside another. I mean, just for instance, why does it have those windows? So you can see the strobing blue light in the tube, because that's going to make the journey more pleasant, right? But, you know, it's looking kind of familiar, like I've seen this sort of thing before. You see, inside the Hyperloop as it's meant to function, not so sure they've actually got that far yet, but it's meant to be a vacuum.
Since the tubes are deliberately drained of their excess inner air, in other words vacuumed, the friction and drag is brought to an absolute minimum.
Now, because it's a common refrain from Hyperloop fans that it doesn't operate in a vacuum but at low pressure. Okay, fine, I'll cover that. We happily live down here at sea level-ish, where the atmospheric pressure is 1 atmosphere. And if you go to the top of Mount Everest, the atmosphere is a lot thinner. It's about 1/4 of an atmosphere in pressure. And at that sort of pressure, if you go up there without months of acclimatization, you basically black out and die. Now, Hyperloop pressures are about 1/1000th of an atmosphere, and if you get exposed to that, you die very much in the same way that you would in space. That is, you asphyxiate in about 30 seconds.
In the entry in which it talks about dying of asphyxiation 30 seconds after being thrown out of a spaceship.
But, to a reasonable approximation, a plane isn't far off a spacecraft here. In that if you think about a plane, you know, you seal it up at about 1 atmosphere of pressure, and then you keep that pressure as you go up to cruising altitude, which is about the height of Mount Everest. So the difference between the pressure on the inside and the outside is, give or take, about 0.7 atmospheres. But if you go into space, the pressure difference is a little bigger, but not greatly so. It's only about 30% bigger. Yeah, ballpark figures, you've got about 1 atmosphere on the inside and 0 atmospheres on the outside. So what's the cheapest way you can think of to convince people you can do this? Why, you get the smallest, cheapest pressurized plane that you can, and then you just chop off the front and put a door on there. Except no, you can't do that, because if your great rollout of your Hyperloop cabin is obviously a little segment of a plane fuselage, people might not be so impressed.
So when you get onto a Hyperloop system, what we don't want you to do is feel as if you're just on any other mass transit system. because you're not. So what we are trying to do is just reinvent travel, the travel experience.
Now that's where the window is on the outside of the pod, and that's where it is on the inside of the pod, which means that these people, their heads are right on the top of all of this. But what the hell's the window doing that low in the first place? I mean, this makes no sense whatsoever. Windows are usually put at about eye level because that's just the level that people use them at. People don't usually have windows to look down. And in this case, it makes even less sense because, the window is somewhere between elbow and shoulder level. So you look out and you don't just see a metal tube outside, but you see the lower part of the metal tube outside. And of course, if you zoom in there, you'll see that about half of the view is obscured by the outer fairing. Now, I should stress, there is just no point in having windows on this thing at all, because all you will ever see through them is the strobe light of the blue lights that they have in their tube for no apparent reason. And that's just what everyone wants on their futuristic transport system, is to watch a blue strobe light for 20 minutes. Now that might sound like a bit of a nitpick, but just bear in mind that these people are claiming that they're going to revolutionize transport.
The Hyperloop travels at more than double the speed of the supercar and leaves the plane firmly in its dust as well. It's not even a competition. The tickets are poised to be surprisingly affordable. We're still waiting on exact figures, however, Elon Musk presented a comparable price for us. A Los Angeles to San Francisco ticket on a Hyperloop-style train would theoretically only set you back about $20, a third of the price of a regular train ticket.
We are talking Fire Festival levels of overpromise and under-deliver here.
The actual experience exceeds all expectations and is something that's hard to put into words.
Hauled onto a school bus and taken to the site, a gravel lot with a bunch of FEMA tents.
All these things that may seem big and impossible are not. It gives people that type of energy.
Oh no!
Remember those promises of luxurious villas?
Right around.
Everyone else is grumpy because it's been 5 hours and there's no food. It was getting dark and there was no lighting.
So everybody's walking around with their cell phones trying to look for their luggage.
And even with only 500 people, there are too few tents and beds, so everyone is just stealing each other's.
A Hyperloop-style train would theoretically only set you back about $20, a third of the price of a regular train ticket.
On top of that, let's listen to what these people were saying 5 years ago about where we would be now in terms of Hyperloop development.
So we're planning to have the system available commercially in 2021, and that'll be the first time that people will be able to use the system and travel on it themselves.
Oh, what? Wait, he's got more?
We get really, really lucky with a country, with a government, with regulators, and with financial backers that want to see this come into fruition. We'll let you punch that ticket in 2020. That's our goal. 3 projects underway, and the first production system by 2020.
Yeah, that didn't happen. In reality, they've achieved almost nothing in 5 years. When do they now claim that it's actually going to be really operational?
Virgin Hyperloop aimed to be safety certified by 2025 and running commercial operations by 2030.
Is certification that will take place in 2025 or 2026. And I think you'll be able to see Hyperloop projects before the end of the decade. It's not far off. We're at the moment in time where we're now ready to make this happen.
For a number of years, Hyperloop remained as little more than another one of Elon Musk's highly ambitious ideas. That all changed when British billionaire Richard Branson got involved.
I mean, these people are billionaires. There's no possible way they could lie to us. Otherwise, how did they get to be billionaires? I mean, take for instance Richard Branson, who is the head of Virgin Hyperloop here. Back in 1999, he promised that within 5 years, he would have a space hotel and a fleet of reusable rockets that would be shuttling them up and down to it. Or, 13 years later, he told people that only 500 people had ever been into space. Very soon, Virgin Galactic would take that number every year. It isn't rocket science, he quipped.
Jay Walders proudly admitted that the project will generate hundreds of thousands of new high-tech jobs, create over $36 billion in wider socioeconomic benefits.
All these things that may seem big and impossible are not. It gives people that type of energy.
And create new Hyperloop component and manufacturing opportunities to export to India and the rest of the world.
Yeah, but ignoring all the too good to be true promises, there are also some cute little coronavirus moments in this, in that you take a look at the control room, everyone's got masks on. Sure, great. But what about the two people in an enclosed, confined space?
Hyperloop envisions a future where floating pods packed with passengers and cargo will hurtle through vacuum tubes at speeds of 600 miles per hour or faster. Sunday's safety test was a key step to making that possible.
What? You crazy? Look, people get inside those airtight, pressurized cans every day. They're called planes, and they go up to altitude where the air is very thin. There is nothing even remotely new or groundbreaking about doing that. And people in those exact same tubes, in those airplanes, go faster than they did in the Hyperloop merely before takeoff. And your typical plane, your typical runway, is twice as long as this Hyperloop. In fact, why not? Let's take a quick look at the size of a typical airport. This is Las Vegas Airport, and compare it to the size of our Hyperloop, shall we? So we're going to come out of town, we've got to go out, oh, and there it is. That's the size of the Hyperloop compared to Las Vegas Airport. Yeah, their test track is so small that really the fastest that you could sensibly go in this thing is about 100 miles per hour. Because if you go through the calculations, at max acceleration, they're getting up to about 100 miles per hour in about 8 seconds, then back to zero in about 8 seconds. Otherwise, the human test subjects smash into the steel wall at the end of the Hyperloop. Yeah, it's maybe something I didn't emphasize with this test is that these people are being accelerated towards the steel end of the tube for this test. And that after the test was over, they had to reverse back down the tube because that's the only place they can get them out of the tube. Which brings us on to the real question, like why would you build a Hyperloop test track this small, where the fastest that you could sensibly get up to in this thing is about 100 miles per hour? Surely the minimum length track that you should build if you were serious about this is enough to get up to full speed, which would be about 20 times longer than their current test track. So why build a test track this small? I'll give you a clue. Because merely building a 500-meter vacuum tube like this is a technological nightmare. Hell, this thing's just been sat in the desert with minimal use and minimalistic atmospheric wear for a few years. And already, this is what the state of the seals look like.
And we're now talking about something that's incredibly fast, up to 600 miles an hour. That's high capacity, that's on demand and flexible the way we want to live our lives, that can carry people and cargo. And on top of all of that, is environmentally friendly.
Amazing. Every word of what you just said was wrong.
In reality, of course, all they're promising here is a maglev train that maybe, we'll come back to that in a second, but maybe is a bit fast and a lot more expensive and a lot more dangerous. Oh, plus, minor technical point, they don't know how to build one yet. Well, not one that delivers this 600 miles per hour stuff anyway. So I'm going to bear in mind, that this concept of the vacuum train has been kicking around for about 100 years, bringing all the hazards of spaceflight down within a few centimeters of the Earth's surface.
As the new form of ground transportation, the Hyperloop aims to be the benchmark transit system of the future. Before too long, its tunnels will not only be connecting neighboring cities in record-breaking time, but they'll be traversing underwater, cutting through mountains, perhaps even going fully vertical.
I mean, even if you believe their cloud cuckoo numbers of 600 miles per hour, that's maybe only a factor of 2 to 3 times quicker than current high-speed rail. And when I say, that they're nowhere near doing this, nothing that has traveled in a Hyperloop tube has actually really gained anything from the low-pressure environment yet.
Since the tubes are deliberately drained of their excess inner air, in other words vacuum, the friction and drag is brought to an absolute minimum.
Yeah, I mean, it tests at about 100 miles an hour like this one. There's just not actually that much drag there. It's as simple as that. Nothing has gone that fast in a Hyperloop tube. In fact, you might wonder, wouldn't a better way of doing this be to, say, get an existing maglev and then just build a vacuum tube around it? And the reason that's not happened, of course, is it's actually pretty technologically challenging just to build the maglev. And to put the vacuum tube around it would make it massively more expensive and massively more prone to failure because it's now got so many more failure points in it and more difficult to maintain. For what? Maybe at best, maybe a factor of 2 in speed? Nah, it's just diminishing returns at that point. And just to give you a feel of the caliber of people that you're dealing with here, this is meant to be one of the big Hyperloop firms. These have hundreds of millions of dollars in backing.
The multi-billion-dollar infrastructure project, estimated to cost about 700 billion rupees, or close enough to 10 billion American, has required funding from investors time and time again.
And let's take a look at their amazing line of potential Hyperloop pods. Which numbers? Well, there's that one, and there's maybe a prototype in the background. Oh, and look, you can see that they've got the window on the little plane body in exactly the middle of the tube. And I know it's a tiny thing, but no competent designer would put a window there. And this is all the progress they've made in 5 years. They've addressed none of the important questions about building a Hyperloop.
The first passenger test has now been done of the first new mode of transportation, mass transportation, that we've had in 100 years.
That's unless, of course, you count putting people in giant metal tubes and having them hurtle from one place to another at about the speed of sound. It's a brand new technology that no one's ever done before. Damn, I mean, even if you take a look at their most promising project, which is going to be connecting Mumbai and Pune.
The construction will start here, in the state of Maharashtra, and it will provide lightning-quick transit between 2 sprawling cities, Mumbai, the nation's financial center, and Pune.
And it's going to take 25 minutes to go the amazing 150 kilometers there. Let's see, it's about 150 kilometers in 25 minutes. That's about 300 kilometers per hour. That's slower than existing maglevs.
The company's chairman called the test historic, as the magnetic Hyperloop system would be twice as fast as a commercial jet.
And not just a little slower either, it's half the bloody speed. And that's their most promising project for a Hyperloop.
Hyperloop is pioneering concepts in the EU, and there's plenty of talk of a connection between Mexico City to Guadalajara in Mexico as well. Alas, the rest of the world still sits in the shadow of India's plan.
Yes, of building a brand new form of transport that is half as fast as a current maglev train.
Well, if it's fast, it's gotta be loud, right? Wrong. The Hyperloop is advertised as being remarkably quiet, so not only will it be lightning quick, but surprisingly relaxing.
Yes!
Now, part of me has to secretly congratulate them on this, in that merely getting up to 100 miles per hour in a vacuum tube where people could actually die isn't actually that easy. Normally, you have to travel up to about 30,000 feet to experience a hazard like that. But they exposed people to exactly that hazard and brought it all the way down to ground level. And on a technological level, that's actually worth a tip of the hat. But in terms of slaying the technological beast that stops you from building a Hyperloop, they score a 1 out of 10 for this. They did nothing to bring the Hyperloop any closer with this media stunt. The Hyperloop is just the metaphorical equivalent of saying, why do we bother building bridges when we could simply all drive Batmobiles?
She was built as a bridging vehicle. During combat, 2 of these would jump over a river rampless jump.
Does it come in black?
So that's the video for today. If you enjoyed it, give it a thumbs up. And if you really enjoy the work of this channel and want to support it directly, you can do it through Patreon. I'll leave the links below. And thanks for watching.